Hello, you're watching This Week in FM. Welcome back to Reconomy's Don't Waste It Breakfast Roundtable, held on Tuesday the 19th of November at M Restaurant in Threadneedle Street in London. The theme of the roundtable is around waste management, looking at delivering value and efficiency in a constantly changing market. The first and second sessions are available on the ThisWeekinFM website and our YouTube channel. The first session looked at meeting changing customer demands and expectations for managing waste and wastage, and the second on changing the way waste is managed to improve efficiency. Attendees, led by the founder and custodian of the Planet Mark, Steve Malkin, are actively voicing their opinions and discussing real practical solutions. We join the roundtable now as the third session begins. It is focused on applying a different measure and using technology to improve efficiency, and will involve evaluating current metrics and emerging alternatives. Let's join the third session.
So welcome back. Thanks everyone. This is Don't Waste It, brought to you by Reconomy and also This Week in FM. There's a bit of building work happening next door, but we're going to press on regardless. This session here is about applying different measures to waste management and how to better procure your waste management providers. Now in here we'll be looking at different metrics you might be able to apply to waste management, but also how to get better data back to you so you can report things like tons of waste that have gone to, diverted from landfill. We might be looking at recycling. We're probably going to be talking about carbon. Is that right, Nathan?
Absolutely. I mean, I think taking the whole essence of today is actually we understand climate change. That is measured in terms of global warming, reducing global warming to 1.5 degrees C. We know that the link between carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is helping us to, unfortunately, warm up the atmosphere. So actually, by bringing those measures back and linking what we understand about climate to the physical activities of on-the-ground stuff that we get rid of, normalizing data is the absolute thing that we need to do across the board so that we can measure eggs with eggs, apples with apples, and oranges with oranges, or carbon with carbon. So carbon equivalents, and there are emission factors that actually the government publish. Actually, Southampton University, I've been tapping up Ian Williams, who's done some fantastic work on this down there, where actually some real relevant and related metrics about the process that you actually send your waste to. Unfortunately, DEFRA's emission factors are, they actually on the face of it appear to be the same whether you recycle, reuse, or because they're looking at transportation. So understanding what your metrics are representing is really important.
So can we launch into that bit first, and then I'm going to come back to you on the second parts of that, if you don't mind. Is that right? Because I want to start with what we measure right now. Is that okay? So the way that what are the sort of standard measurements for our waste? Is that sort of like in terms of tonnes? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean tonnes, but I think it's our procurement buddies that need to help us on specifying what it is that we want from our waste contractors, because there's sort of a hierarchy, and the quality of data is again something government is really striving towards. They need to know how we're performing as a country with regards to CO2, so that they can go to Paris or actually Madrid this next month, and they were going for the conference of parties, and they need to commit to what they've reduced. They can't do that because, okay, they've turned off all the coal-fired power stations. That was a good tick. But actually now we've got to work harder, a little bit. So understanding if your contractor can give you actual weights of your waste.
Great. Can I pick that point up? Because I know that Maria's nodding furiously. So do you mind if I just jump in? Sorry.
Perfect.
The procurement piece is a difficult one actually, because I've reported into procurement in my last role, and there is a bit of a mismatch between facilities and procurement. They don't always get that it's about the quality of the end result. It's all about cost. It's only about cost. Bottom line from procurement perspective.
Are you allowed to say
that? I certainly felt it in my last organisation, and I think it's getting that message through that says, it is about the whole picture. It's about what you get, the end result. It's not about just going to a company because it's the cheapest company and the cheapest option.
Okay, so we're looking at value here,
Value
not just...
and getting the quality, the end result quality.
I'll say, so on that point, you're totally right. But when you educate the people that are involved in the full value chain, end-to-end value chain, and you say to them, look, it is about cost, but actually doing the right thing reduces cost. So, there's probably three simple measures that people talk about is, first of all, it comes in cost. Then how do we increase our recycling? Because then that's not going into general waste. And how do we reduce our overall tonnage? That then plays back to actually you should be reducing your costs because it should be cheaper.
So hold on, just wait for a sec.
Yeah.
Just because we're going to deliver coffee.
Okay.
So because this is our fuel. It's fine.
That's
No,
fine.
it's good. I think we
I'll be
need
kicking
it.
off again on this.
Yeah, we need energy to do this piece.
Monitoring where you
Great.
drop
But
them on
as a
that.
facilities head, unless you've got that data, unless you've got that proof.
Yeah.
Can we hold this? Sorry, guys, because I want to capture it. Do you mind?
Yeah.
Because I don't mind if it's like disagreement or how do we get it better. Yeah. What I do want to do though is we'll stop the rolling here, right? Is how do we procure better? Yeah. And on what metrics are you procuring on? Yeah. So how can we drive change through this procurement piece? Can we get onto that? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we want to procure better, don't we?
Yeah.
Better specification. Who's talking about specification?
Well, I did earlier
Yeah.
about
All right. So we're going to do this bit and then we'll do
Yeah.
specification. Yeah. Over here. All right. We're going to do that bit. So can we hold? Can you start again?
Okay.
No pressure.
What did I say?
Yeah.
Write it down.
Are you in the same space here on tendering and prequels and so on? Is that about what you want to jump into? Yes, no.
No, it's more about the data
Great.
collation.
Okay, so we're going to do this procurement piece and then we're going to do the data piece. Is that okay? Right. So can we? Where were we? Where were we?
So I suppose I'm trying to think where to start. So when you look at dealing with waste, it does come down to cost. But when actually there's probably some free metrics around it in terms of reducing the amount of waste that's produced, increasing your recycling rate, and that then should be reducing your costs. But there also goes on to in terms of the right data being available. So what are the alternatives to landfill? So what other options are there? So you've got your biomass incinerators, you've got anaerobic digestion, you've got pyrolysis, gasification. There's lots of different technologies out there that I suppose we don't get to see the insight of the data. So what is the carbon offset? What is the amount of renewable energy you're producing? Playing that back to the client then probably has an additional value to them to understanding. Okay, we might have to increase costs in certain areas because doing the right thing, the sustainability, and going to the right alternative technologies to landfill, it's a better outcome for us all.
So can we? So is there a piece around specification here then, in terms of how you buy better waste management services? Is there a piece in there you could write into some procurement on this, Chris?
So I see a lot of tenders, a lot come through, right through from RFIs, PQQs, ITTs, RFPs.
What's an ITT?
An invitation to tender.
Oh, right.
So all sorts of things come through across our desk in asking us to look at a whole project for an organisation to manage their waste. And the interesting factor is that you quite often have a whole preamble to that document which states that they're an organisation which are focused on carbon reduction, the planet, and they go through this whole preamble about how important it is to them in getting their recycling rates up. And then gradually as you get down through the document, it goes through the stages of that tender, and then ultimately it says, and there's going to be bid 1, bid 2, then there's going to be presentations, and then the final selection pieces, and then we're going to go to e-auction, which means that you effectively have bid twice already, and then they invite everybody onto an auction website to bid their absolute lowest cost. So all of the preamble that they gave about doing the right thing becomes completely meaningless, because it's just a race to the bottom to drive people to the lowest common denominator. So I think this isn't a direct criticism, it's just that tends to be sometimes when a tender procurement process is run purely through procurement, instead of allowing other departments to become involved, to have their input about the importance of doing the right thing, the importance of carbon reduction, the importance of recycling, so that you find the right waste contractor to work with you.
I agree completely, because if the wrong person is dealing with it in procurement, you've got no chance. And it should be all the heads pulled together. It should be facilities. They should be involved because they're the ones dealing with it on the spot, on the ground, and they're seeing the impact of it. They should be driving it, working alongside procurement. Quite often you don't get FM people within procurement. They're normally just generalised procurement people. They just buy anything and everything. That's not what you want. You want somebody that actually understands.
So
what
isn't
facilities
this,
about.
just coming back to it, a lot of this with tenders is about the weighting that we put on each section. Right. So isn't it incumbent upon us as the FM industry to make that case?
Yeah.
The drive to the bottom, unfortunately, is a culture in a lot of industries, not just ours, lots of industries, yeah? It's about bottom line, cheapest. Pay cheap, get cheap, and we know that. So I think as I say, the onus is on us as an industry to say, the weighting on sustainability, instead of it being 2%, has to be 20%, right? And this is why we think it has to be done, and it has to be a partnership environment with the providers, with the client, with the local government. The whole thing, the whole supply chain has to be involved.
Paul, I know you're going to jump in here because
And I think just adding on what Keith was saying, I think when it comes to waste providers, we're not comparing apples with apples because of how they report through to us.
Yeah.
So very often we'll have waste providers coming in bidding in different formats to us. We then take on their service, and when it comes to actually them removing waste from site, they very often don't have the facilities to process a lot of that highly segregated waste. So if you had to go back and have a look at the CO2 emissions that they've generated in their entire trip and route and link that back into how they've reported to you, there's no facility that accommodates or accounts for that. So you might think you have a really good deal, but once you've gone and taken the whole spectrum into consideration, you might find that... Carry on, Nathan.
I think that there's a trick here that we're also missing, and so integrating the waste service, the remover, with the cleaners, who are actually, they're responsible for putting the stuff in the bin. They need to be educated on the input spec of that bin, what is allowed to go in there. They are the last line of defence that actually take the waste out of the building. If it has been segregated in accordance with the strategy, if you had a 3-bin approach and you said, right, that's what was going in there, that is what we will actually put in that bin. But the cleaner has to be performance measured, linked to the targets of the waste, because they are the ones controlling. Now, they can't take the whole can for the recycling not being good. That information has to be captured on where the contamination occurred on the 12th floor, and so actually performance measurement of floors, the cleaners, the waste companies to meet the overall target is crucial.
So there's a bit about joining. I think the cleaners want to come in because they're desperate to join this conversation, aren't they?
Head on the wall.
Let us in. We love this, you know. So I know, Dave, you might want to.
I think one of the key aspects of it all is particularly, when you're looking at a connected supply chain and you're looking at a connected set of services, that's the biggest problem, because it's, we look at waste, but waste in a tender tends to be a notation of tonnage, what it is, paper, how it's all broken down, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a number. It's not a service. Because if you look at most cleaning tenders, they tend to, it's point of drop of usage, and then someone else takes the waste. So there's no connection between the waste and the cleaning.
So
between the catering, the engineering services, there's no connection between that and waste.
how do we join these dots then?
Well, the actual specification has to be written insofar as that the cleaners know exactly what they're going to do with the waste and where it goes to, and how that is then disposed of. Because if you don't, it will just be a black plastic sack that's taken down to the loading bay and thrown in a silo.
So is that in tender, or can that also be done once you've got these partners on site?
It tends to be because we will quote a tender. All of us around the table that are contractors, we only quote because we know we're back to the point of the race to the bottom.
If you're specifying the standard that should be achieved, so zero waste is the standard that we want to get to. What does that mean? Well, actually, you reuse, eliminate, or recycle. That's good. you burn or bury, and actually you can only burn or bury 10% of the total waste. So actually someone's got to work damn hard to get to zero waste. And everyone in that chain has to be so you need to know where your waste is going, and that's a legal understanding on destination. It's got to be, does it go to a energy from waste plant, a recycler, what proportion has gone to the recycler, and if your waste is being rejected because you've contaminated more than 5%, you shouldn't get a partial recycling figure. The whole lot's been discarded, it's burnt. So actually you're being penalised financially.
So is that then becomes one element of your KPI? That you are clearly measured on the amount of waste that you're generating. So rather than, we got through the building in X amount of time and we've sorted it out, we've had less sick days. Well, actually, you wanted 10%. Because we got to 15, and therefore there is a clear measurement there that you can, when it comes down to rewarding the contract, you can use that.
Can I just let Martin jump in? I know.
Yeah, I think in the first session we talked about putting a value on environmental credentials, whatever that meant, outside the price to serve. And I think you've alluded to some form of performance indicator when you are choosing a contractor for whatever service, that becomes a larger proportion of the decision-making process, if that could be the case, and more widely in procurement teams, and that would be, I think, valued by certainly the SMEs. But I think, when you talk about collecting data, you've got to be mindful about the way that the workforce operate these days. And I should come back to the point we talked about educating the people. You need to move outside of the thought process around the workplace. Most of these conversations have happened around large sites that have facilities to be able to segregate. We still take over contracts where there's a bin under the desk, okay, and there might be some recycling receptacles, and then that all goes into an 1,100 litre Euro car. So how the hell are you going to pick up data from that? Is a challenge. Let me just finish. Also, you need to be mindful about the way people operate these days. They don't work from offices so much anymore. They work in remote ways. They might work from a Starbucks at home, from the car. Coming back to the education outside of the facilities that are provided in the workplace, it's about you talked about education earlier, about ingraining in the people to do the right thing regardless of the facilities that are available for them. I just think that's a real challenge. And then the data collection, I think it's down to whoever is trying to create that data environment from a reporting perspective. It's about having some clear guidelines and some clear matrix for the supply chain to be able to complete. So everyone's reporting in outside the challenges. Everyone's reporting in the same way. Otherwise, you're always going to get a myriad of information, and you'll never be able to get to the right data set eventually.
I agree. So that's a really great place to jump off. And so you started with these practical issues and challenges that remain across different organisations, different sizes, different places where we're working now. But actually, it's underpinned by most people want to try and do the right thing if we can, but we have to be able to measure in the same way. And I want to bring this back into that measurement piece because we're talking about tons of waste going to different places. But actually, we're trying to net this off into carbon. Because people are measuring carbon, aren't they? Right? So we know we've got to net this off into carbon. So how are we doing that, and how are we going to get better data? Can you just help us with that to start with, and then let's.
So I'll pick up on that to start with. So in terms of the reporting, in the waste collection market, there tends to be two ends of a spectrum, and I'm not saying one is totally right or one is totally wrong. They're just two ends of the spectrum. You have what we'd call a tactical waste collector, who is a typical national provider that's very good at just turning up on your doorstep, putting the waste into the back of a truck, taking it off and processing it. They do it all day long. What they're not so good at is getting into then the detail for you on your behalf in providing you with the meaningful data that you require. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got other organisations who are able to deliver you some portal, an online portal that you can log into, and you can gather data. Is that data always 100% perfect because of your circumstances, because you might have a much smaller office? No, but it's a quantum leap ahead of having no data. Yeah, and it's based on some industry standards, it's based on some well-known facts, it's based on some well-known industry information. And you should be asking your waste provider at that given location, whoever they may be, are they capable of you assisting with that data? Not only should they be able to provide you with an online portal to be able to plug into to see the waste management that's gone on at that particular site, but they should also then be able to say, and we can help you if you so wish to convert that back to some carbon reporting to show you that by putting in a service where, because you've only got a small bin, that will allow you to segregate some of your recyclable waste in a bag because you've got so little room, and we'll do that, and we'll report on that bag how many bags you've collected and what the average weight of that bag is likely to be, and then what that converts back to in terms of a carbon saving. That's the type of obligation that you should be putting forward to your waste contractor.
And I think, just on that, into the procurement side of things, so when you're specifying, you want actual weights. So that's the best thing you've got. And actually you want to know, was it contaminated or not? Because if it is contaminated, there's going to be a charge, a different charge, a double handling cost perhaps. So you're really going to want to know about that. The next level down, so the waste contractor should be able to help you with a bin dive. So take a representative proportion of your waste, rip it apart, analyse it for you, take weights, so you've got actual weights, and we've done that with ReFood on food for a retailer where we wanted to know how much packaging was in there because they accepted packaging and food from the retailer. Using that as a justification report on this is the average bin weight that we will apply to our estate is based on fact and actual data. And then lower down you've got the BBP, Better Building Practice, sort of standardised for office and shopping centres weights that have been, they assess that. So that's the hierarchy, real stuff based on fact to be applied across a portfolio, or industry averages, but actually indicating that that is an estimate because you don't know. And so that is in your database, and you're probably not going to be surprised that we've got a fantastic tool that can help you normalise, and that's the beauty of and where SECA is going. They want normalised data, because normalised data means you can then apply metrics on square foot, footfall, kilograms per passenger at airports. Those are things that they want you to be able to report on so that you can measure how good you are across your portfolio, and actually but to compare to your competitors as well. So that's where we're heading.
That's where we're heading. Mm-hmm. We're heading out of this session, into the next session already.
Can I just add to that? Because we're slightly different from all you, because we're a provider, so we generate a lot of waste as a food provider. So we're measuring CO2 coming in, not going out. So you're measuring it going out, we're measuring it coming in. So you need to reduce both ends.
Yes.
So scope 3 is absolutely what that's about, is your supply chain, knowing what they're impacting you.
So we need better data. Yeah, we need actual data. Set some targets, and I think by setting targets we can then procure better. And one thing I've just learned is something called a bin dive, and I'm going to leave it on that particular note because I fancy doing one of those. Thanks ever so much for this great session. Thank you.
That concludes the third session of the Reconomy Don't Waste It Roundtable. Measurement was a key factor, and a standardised way of capturing and presenting data is required across the entire supply chain. Clear guidelines and a matrix is needed so everyone is reporting in the same way. Different companies of different sizes and operating methods have very different challenges, and service providers end up collecting a myriad of information, making it extremely difficult to identify the correct data set. It led to further discussions around education, and that service providers should not only capture correct data and present it in a clear manner, but also offer additional data and advise the client on how changes can be made across the portfolio to make it better. With correct data, actual data, targets can be set, and once targets are set, monitored and measured, procurement can be better. The first 2 sessions of this roundtable are available on ThisWeekinFM's website, our YouTube channel, and the final session will be released over the coming weeks. Please contact ThisWeekinFM if you would like to be involved in a roundtable or any other event. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on ThisWeekinFM.